Dawn, November 21st, 2025. The Gulf of Thailand was still immersed in a thin layer of milky gray fog. The first sunlight of the day just flickered on the horizon, casting long, pale, pink streaks on the sea surface, calm like a giant mirror. Light wind, not a single large ripple. Only the sound of water lapping regularly against the sides of patrol boats, quietly cutting waves. Suddenly, the dead silent air was torn apart by a terrifying explosion from the Thai mainland. A giant black smoke column rose straight up thousands of meters into the sky, swirling into a mushroom shape right over the airbase area near Sattahip. The explosion's sound echoed across the sea, making the water surface vibrate lightly like a small earthquake. Seagulls panic-stricken flew scattered from the rocky islands. At the Vietnamese coastal radar station over 100 nautical miles away, the duty crew suddenly saw the screen blinking red. Dozens of strange signals, moving extremely fast, just appeared, then disappeared in a few seconds before the explosion occurred. Officers on the observation post immediately raised the alarm. Radios rang continuously. The Naval Command received an urgent report. One or more stray projectiles had hit the territory of Allied Thailand. In the underground war room, the atmosphere was taut as a string. Red lights flashed continuously. The electronic map showed the Gulf of Thailand's sea area glowing with alarm points. Chiefs of staff exchanged briefly, voix low but decisive. The first order was issued. All nearest patrol forces immediately change course, accelerate to max speed towards Thai waters. Simultaneously, the coastal defense system switched to highest combat readiness state. At sea, the sun just rose above the horizon, when black smoke columns from land dyed a corner of the sky red. The wind began to strengthen, carrying the strong smell of gunpowder from afar. The originally blue sky was now obscured by a thick layer of smoke. The situation was worsening by the second. Less than 15 minutes after the first explosion, Vietnamese coastal radar lit up again. Dozens of strange signals, speed over 800 nautical miles per hour, rushing straight from the north down to the Gulf of Thailand. Bright dots moving in clear formation, not stray bullets anymore, but a deliberate attack wave. In the underground war room, staff officers stood up almost simultaneously. The electronic map showed dense red streaks. Emergency orders were broadcast continuously. All Vietnamese frigates and missile ships patrolling within 100 nautical miles immediately accelerate to maximum, heading straight for the sea area near Sattahip. Simultaneously, the coastal missile defense system switched to live-fire combat state. On the sea surface, the Vietnamese warship formation began to move. Seawater was parted white under the bows of over 10 frigates and missile ships. Engines roared. Speed surged to over 35 knots per hour. Main cannons on deck rotated continuously, radar scanned ceaselessly. Gunner crews were in position, loaded and ready. At the same time, from the south, the U.S. aircraft carrier group suddenly changed course. 2 escort carriers, along with over 10 destroyers and cruisers, cutting across the East Sea at top speed. Early warning aircraft took off continuously, forming a giant radar net covering the entire Gulf of Thailand. Urgent coordination notification was sent directly to the Vietnam Naval Command. We are coming. Hold formation. About 40 nautical miles from the Thai coast, large amphibious ships of unknown origin began appearing in the bright mist. They moved slowly, ship sides full of armed soldiers, clearly preparing to land on the area just exploded. The first Vietnamese frigate rushed in, distance narrowing rapidly to less than 10 nautical miles. The first collision happened without a single warning word. Vietnamese missile ship cut across the enemy landing ship's bow. Water waves rose over 10 meters high. Sound of metal colliding echoed. Warning shot exploded right in front of the strange ship's bow. Water splashed like rain. The opponent responded with machine gun bursts from the deck. Fire bullets drew bright paths on the sea surface. Meanwhile, on the command deck of the lead frigate, official fire order was issued. Main cannon fired continuously. The first shell hit right in the engine room of the largest landing ship. Fire flared up violently, billowing black smoke. Second, third explosions rang out in succession. The sea surface glowed with firelight in the morning. The Vietnam Naval Command officially issued a red alert: destroy all targets attempting to land on Thai territory. Less than 3 minutes later, over 20 coastal defense missiles left the launchers simultaneously. Brilliant orange streaks of fire tore through the fog, zooming over the heads of the Vietnamese frigate formation, aiming straight at the enemy amphibious group only 18 nautical miles from shore. The terrifying shriek of the missiles drowned out the sound of the waves. The first one hit right on the largest landing ship. A column of fire over 50 meters high flared up, tearing the hull into 2 pieces. Seawater rushed into the compartment like a waterfall, dragging hundreds of armed soldiers to the bottom in just a few seconds. The sound of metal screeching painfully. Then secondary explosions from the ammo depot echoed throughout the bay. At the same time, Vietnamese missile ships fired simultaneously. Over 60 anti-ship missiles flew close to the water surface at terrifying speed, creating a net of fire with no escape. The enemy radar screen blinked chaotically. Their defense systems tried to intercept, but only neutralized less than 1/3. 3 other landing ships were hit in succession. One exploded amidships. Fire spread to the fuel tank, turning the entire ship into a giant floating fireball. The second one was torn in 2. The bow sank completely, leaving only the stern sticking up like a tombstone. The third one tried to turn around to flee, then was struck straight in the engine room by a second missile, dead in the water, billowing black smoke. Meanwhile, in the sky south of the Gulf of Thailand, over 10 US fighter jets appeared from the low clouds. They dived to an altitude of just a few hundred meters, dropping precision-guided bombs on the remaining ships of the enemy formation. Each bomb exploded, creating a water column tens of meters high, accompanied by a dry explosion sound echoing throughout the sea area. Vietnamese coastal artillery continued to roar. Hundreds of large-caliber shells drew bright red parabolic lines in the sky, falling like rain of fire. The sea surface boiled vigorously. The remaining landing ships were now just burning piles of scrap metal, drifting aimlessly amidst smoke and fire. The enemy force completely disintegrated. Dozens of speedboats tried to rescue people, but they themselves were illuminated by flares from Vietnamese anti-submarine helicopters and shot down right on the water surface. Screams, explosions, sound of water rushing into compartments rang out ceaselessly. In less than 20 minutes, the entire amphibious cluster had been wiped out. 12 minutes after the first missile wave, military satellite imagery appeared clearly on the large screen of the Vietnamese war room. The black smoke column from Satahip Air Base was over 3,000 meters high, curling into a giant mushroom shape covering the entire western sky of the Gulf of Thailand. Fire was still burning fiercely along the runway. Secondary fires exploded continuously from the hit ammunition depot. On the sea surface, wrecks of over 15 enemy landing ships were burning or sinking gradually. Oil slick formed black streaks kilometers long. Bodies and debris floated densely. Some remaining lifeboats tried to run to the north, but were immediately chased by Vietnamese anti-submarine helicopters. Flares dropped blindingly white, then a volley of small rockets finished them off right on the water surface. At the same time, from the southeastern horizon, the US aircraft carrier formation had closed in to only 50 nautical miles. Over 30 fighter jets took off simultaneously from 2 flight decks, forming flocks zooming over the heads of Vietnamese frigates. They flew low close to the sea surface. Aerodynamic surfaces shrieked like tearing silk, then pulled up high simultaneously, creating a tight air defense net over the entire bay. Suddenly, Vietnamese radar alerted at the highest level again. 3 new signal clusters, each cluster over 10 high-speed fighter jets, rushing down from the north at a speed of over 1,000 nautical miles per hour. They flew close to the sea surface to avoid radar, less than 50 meters from the water surface, clearly intending to retaliate. Vietnam-US coordination order was issued in just a few seconds. Vietnamese coastal defense system fired first. Over 40 anti-aircraft missiles left launchers from hidden positions in coconut groves, drawing long, bright red fire trails on the gray, smoky sky background. The boost explosion sound echoed like thunder. Next was the fire net from US ships. Hundreds of anti-aircraft and interceptor missiles launched simultaneously. from over 10 destroyers and cruisers, forming a dense wall of fire thousands of meters high. The radar screen glowed bright like fireworks. The enemy aircraft fleet rushed into the fire net. The first missile hit the lead plane precisely. The plane exploded in midair into a fireball. Debris fell into the sea like rain. The second, third ones tried to pull up to avoid, but were caught by secondary missiles. Wings severed, crashing straight into water, creating a water column over 100 meters high. Within less than 3 minutes, over 20 enemy aircraft had been shot down. Burning plane wreckage fell fluttering down into the Gulf of Thailand, creating dozens of new fires on the oil-slicked sea surface. The remaining ones panicked, turned to flee, but Vietnamese anti-submarine helicopters and US fighter jets immediately pursued, letting not a single one escape. The entire Gulf of Thailand sky now only had the sound of Allied engines. The Gulf of Thailand sky was now covered by black smoke. Only streaks of anti-aircraft missile fire, flashing like lightning in broad daylight, remained. The sea surface was mottled with burning oil, dozens of fire patches floating like giant torches. Secondary explosion sounds still echoed from enemy landing, shipwrecks. Each explosion pushed another pitch-black water column high up. Meanwhile, at the Vietnamese coastal artillery positions, the gunner group continued loading ammunition at breakneck speed. Over 100 large-caliber shells were fired continuously within 5 minutes, aiming at the remaining targets in the distance. Each shell landing created a water column over 40 meters high, shredding the speedboats trying to flee. On the sea surface near Satahip, Vietnamese frigates formed a perfect protective circle, only 8 nautical miles from shore. Main cannons on the ships fired simultaneously, creating a wall of fire, preventing any strange ship from approaching further. Seawater boiled under the rain of bullets. An enemy patrol boat still tried recklessly to rush in, but was hit by 3 anti-ship missiles from a Vietnamese missile ship at the same time. The hull broke in too, sinking completely in less than 30 seconds. At the same time, from the east, over 20 Vietnamese and US anti-submarine helicopters flew close to the sea surface, forming a large swarm. They dropped flares and light torpedoes continuously into water areas suspected of hiding enemy submarine. Each torpedo exploded, creating a white water column tens of meters high, accompanied by a dull explosion sound under the seabed. Suddenly, a remaining large landing ship tried to activate the smoke launch system to screen and run back north, but was immediately dived upon by US fighter jets from above, dropping precision-guided bombs hitting the command room. The entire ship flared up like a fireball, then slowly tilted completely and sank gradually, dragging hundreds of armed soldiers to the bottom of the bay. Less than 10 minutes later, the entire sea area within a 30 nautical mile radius around Satahip was cleared. Only thick black smoke, oil slick, and floating fires remained. Vietnamese frigates began deploying rescue speedboats, but only for Thai forces and civilians. Not a single person from the opposing side was pulled up. On the lead ship's command deck, a new order was issued. Hold formation, await further orders from the Alliance. The sun had risen high, but the Gulf of Thailand was still dark with smoke. 2 US aircraft carriers were now less than 40 nautical miles from the Thai coast. Hundreds of fighter jets took off simultaneously from the flight decks. Jet engine roar drowned out the sound of waves. They formed a 3-layer airspace net, low, medium, high, completely covering from Satahip to the Cambodian border. Meanwhile, beneath the water surface, over 10 Vietnamese anti-submarine helicopters lowered sonar to a depth of 50 meters. An abnormal signal appeared immediately. An enemy submarine trying to sneak in from the southwest. The torpedo launch order was issued without hesitation. 6 light torpedoes dropped down, dragging long white foam trails. Explosion sounds under the seabed rang out continuously. Water columns sprayed over 30 meters high. The submarine was ripped apart, surfacing in a severe tilt, then sank completely in less than a minute, dragging a column of black oil spreading hundreds of meters. At the same time, on the sea surface, the U.S. destroyer formation began firing cruise missiles. Over 100 missiles left launch tubes at once, flying low near water at over 800 knots, targeting remaining targets in the northern bay. Each explosion created a fire column hundreds of meters high, completely wiping out enemy warships, still holding out near small islands. Vietnamese frigates did not stay out of it. They simultaneously launched medium-range anti-ship missiles. Over 40 fire streaks zoomed, coordinating perfectly with the U.S. attack wave. The final enemy patrol boats were hit in succession, hulls broke in two, fire flared up violently, then sank gradually in horrifying metal screeching. In the sky, U.S. fighter jets and Vietnamese anti-submarine helicopters pursued relentlessly. Any speedboats still trying to run were destroyed by rockets and 30mm cannons right on the water surface. Explosions rang out continuously. The sea surface boiled like a boiling pot of water. Within just the last 15 minutes, every trace of the opposing force had been wiped clean from the Gulf of Thailand. Not a single ship remained afloat, not a single plane in the sky, not a single strange radar signal blinking. Near noon, hot wind from the fire blew back to the south, carrying the pungent smell of burning oil. The Gulf of Thailand's sea surface was now like a graveyard of steel. Wrecks of over 30 enemy landing ships, floating disorderly, some still on fire. Some had sunk deep with only bows sticking up like graves. Suddenly, Vietnamese coastal radar screamed loudly. The last three enemy fighter jets, escaping the previous pursuit, recklessly charged straight into Thai airspace from the north. At extreme speed, they flew low close to the sea surface, trying to use black smoke as a screen. Immediate shoot-down order was issued from the Allied Command Center. Over 20 anti-aircraft missiles from U.S. destroyers and Vietnamese coastal defense system left launchers at the same time. Fire trails crisscrossed on the gray sky background, creating a fire net with no gaps. The lead plane was hit by the very first missile. Right wing severed, plane spun like a dry leaf, then crashed straight into the water, exploding into a fire column over 100 meters high. The remaining two tried to pull up to avoid, but secondary missiles caught up. One exploded in midair, debris scattered like black fireworks. The last one was hit in the tail. Losing control, crashed onto a shoal near Satahip. Fire flared up violently. At the same time, beneath the water surface, a remaining enemy submarine tried to fire desperate torpedoes at the Vietnamese frigate formation, but anti-submarine helicopters detected it in time. 4 light torpedoes were dropped right above the target. Continuous explosions under the seabed made the water surface bulge up like an underwater volcano. The submarine was ripped apart, surfacing in a broken-in-half state, then sank forever with a giant column of black oil. On the sea, Vietnamese missile ships continued scanning. Any remaining suspicious speedboats were destroyed by main cannons as soon as they poked out of the smoke. Sound of metal tearing, sound of water rushing into compartments, short screams, then silence. Within less than 8 minutes, every last threat had been wiped out. At noon, the sun hung suspended overhead, but the air was still heavy with the smell of gunpowder smoke. Over 30 large and small fires still smoldered on the Gulf of Thailand's surface, oil slicks stretching into black streaks tens of nautical miles long. Enemy shipwrecks floated disorderly. Some still had secondary explosions, pushing more bright orange fire columns up against the gray sky background. Suddenly, from the north, a final enemy warship formation appeared. Over 10 frigates and missile ships rushing down at top speed. They tried to use thick smoke as a screen, simultaneously launching over 70 anti-ship missiles towards the Vietnam-US alliance formation. The air defense net reacted immediately. Over 150 interceptor missiles from US destroyers and Vietnamese coastal defense systems left launchers at the same time. Fire trails crisscrossed densely in the sky, boost explosion sounds echoed like continuous thunder. Over 80% of enemy missiles were shot down midway, exploding into small floating fireballs, then falling into the sea. The remaining ones rushed in. 3 hit the outermost Vietnamese frigate. Fire flared up violently in the engine room. The ship tilted slightly, but still maintained formation. 2 others were intercepted close aboard by a U.S. cruiser. Water columns rose over 50 meters high. Only one slipped through the net, striking the U.S. destroyer deck, causing a large fire, but the magazine was closed in time. Immediate counterattack. Vietnamese missile ships simultaneously fired over 50 anti-ship missiles. They flew close to the water surface, charging straight into the enemy formation like a swarm of fire bees. U.S. fighter jets dived down from above to support, dropping precision-guided bombs on the lead ship. The first missile hit the largest enemy frigate right on target. The hull was ripped apart, fire spread fast from bow to stern. Then the main magazine exploded. A fire column over 100 meters high. Debris scattered hundreds of meters away. 3 other ships were hit in succession. 1 broke, and 2 sinking immediately. 2 others burned fiercely. Soldiers jumped into the sea densely. Meanwhile, Vietnamese coastal artillery roared ceaselessly. Hundreds of large caliber shells fell like rain, turning the enemy formation into a hell of fire. An enemy missile ship tried to turn around to flee, then was hit by 5 shells at once. Hull exploded, tilted completely, and sank in less than a minute. In just 10 minutes, the entire final enemy formation had been completely wiped out. Late afternoon, the sun red, as a bloodstain hung suspended on the western horizon. The Gulf of Thailand was now completely under the control of the Vietnam-US alliance. Over 40 warships from both sides formed a giant circle. Only 15 nautical miles from the Thai coast, main cannons still rotated slowly but had no targets left to aim at. Underwater, the last anti-submarine helicopter crew dropped the final sonar of the day. No strange signals blinked anymore. Only the sound of waves lapping regularly against the cooled-down enemy shipwrecks, drifting aimlessly amidst oil slick and debris. In the sky, the U.S. fighter jet fleet began to lower altitude, flying an honorary circle over the Vietnamese frigate formation. Jet engine sound decreased, replaced by the sound of wing flaps greeting each other over the common communication frequency. Not a single enemy aircraft remained. All had turned into fires, falling scattered to the bottom of the Gulf. At the same time, at Vietnamese coastal artillery positions, the gunner group began lowering barrels. Thousands of red-hot shell casings lay scattered on the ground. Smoke still rose thickly from the cannons just gone silent. The tension, lasting 10 hours, gradually dissipated, replaced by the heavy silence of victory. From Satahip, Thai rescue forces began to approach under the cover of Vietnamese frigates. Speedboats ran around the smoldering fires, pulling up injured people and civilians lucky to survive from the airbase. Not a single enemy prisoner was brought up. The sea had taken them all. On the U.S. aircraft carrier command deck, the end-of-day order was issued. Area secure. Maintain patrol level 2. Sunset descended, dyeing the entire Gulf of Thailand a bloody red color. Over 50 large and small fires still smoldered on the sea surface, firelight reflected shimmering on the hulls of Allied warships quietly holding position. In the Vietnamese underground war room, the electronic map gradually turned off all red dots. Staff officers sat down for the first time, wiping sweat, looking at each other in silence. Not a single cheer, only long exhales after 10 hours of continuous fighting. At sea, Vietnamese missile ships began recovering speedboats. The water surface now only had oil slick and shipwrecks. Not a single enemy boat remained afloat. The sound of waves lapping gently against the ship's side, like the ocean's breathing after a rage. At the same time, from the U.S. aircraft carrier, over 30 transport helicopters took off, carrying relief forces down to Satahip. They flew low past the remaining smoke columns, dropping lines, hoisting doctors and medical equipment down to the destroyed base area. The sky darkened gradually. Stars began twinkling above the thin smoke layer. The Allied warship formation turned on white searchlights, illuminating the entire sea area like a steel fortress in the black night. No more explosions, no more missile shrieks, only the sound of ship engines running steadily in waves. Night fell completely. Gulf of Thailand immersed in darkness, only lights from over 60 Allied warships remained. The last smoke columns faded gradually into the sea breeze, revealing the cold, starry sky above. At the Vietnam Naval Command, Official order was broadcast to the entire army. Operation ended. Enemy forces completely destroyed. Radar duty crews left the screens for the first time, leaving the last bright dots extinguishing on the electronic map. On the sea surface, Vietnamese frigates and US destroyers began rotating patrol. They cut waves slowly through the steel graveyard. Searchlights swept each sunken shipwreck, ensuring no threats remained hidden. New day dawn broke in the east. First sunlight pierced through the thin smoke remaining from yesterday. The Gulf of Thailand was now completely peaceful, under absolute control of the Vietnam-US alliance. Over 70 warships still held formation, but cannons had lowered barrels, radar only scanned in standby mode. Wrecks of over 50 enemy ships had sunk deep or drifted far offshore. Oil slick gradually dissolved. Dolphins began appearing again at the edge of the old war zone. Sound of waves lapping regularly as if 10 hours of hell never happened. From Satahip to the Cambodian border, not a single strange signal remained. Blue sky, calm sea, and the Vietnam-US alliance had rewritten the power map in the Gulf of Thailand in just one day and one night. Operation ended.